Every time you pay for something, whether it's a coffee or a flight, maybe an online purchase, a group of companies takes a small cut of that transaction. And most people have no idea how the system actually works. But the idea behind the modern payments didn't start with a smartphone or a digital wallet. No, it started with a simple piece of cardboard in the 50s. In 1950, a businessman named Frank McNamara went out for a dinner in New York. And at the end of the meal, he realized something, I would say stupid, but let's say uncomfortable. He had forgotten his wallet. And according to the story, that moment led to an idea. Instead of paying with cash, what if people could pay using a card and settle the bill later? And soon after, the first modern charge card was introduced. It was called the Diners Club International Card. At first, it could only be used in a small number of restaurants, but the idea quickly spread, and over the following decades, payment systems evolved, and bank issued credit cards, electronic networks, everything developed, and eventually global payment networks emerged. Today, billions of transactions happen every day, but behind every payment is a system that most people never see. And because when you tap your card or you click pay online, your money doesn't move directly from you to the seller. No, it will travel through the whole global network. So, how payments actually work? When you make a payment, several parties are involved. There is the customer, maybe you, there is the merchant, there is the bank issuing the card, and the bank receiving the payment. And the payment network is connecting them all together. And that is what makes the entire system possible. It ensures that the transactions are authorized, are processed, and also completed within seconds. And two companies dominate that global network. And here's the surprising part. These companies don't issue cards, and they also don't lend money. They simply run the network and collect a fee every time money moves. Two of the most important companies in this whole system is Visa and Mastercard. These companies operate the global payment networks, and they connect banks, the merchants, and also the consumers across the world. And when you use a credit or a debit card, your transaction is routed through one of these networks. Each time that happens, the networks collect a small fee. It may seem insignificant, but when billions of transactions are processed every day, those small fees add up to enormous revenue. And this business model is incredibly powerful because as long as people keep on spending their money, these companies continue to earn. Now, here is where it becomes even more interesting because these companies are not just part of the system, they're also part of the market. So companies like Visa and Mastercard are just publicly traded companies. So that means they are listed on a stock exchange. Investors can buy the shares, and their value reflects on the growth of the global payments. So every time people use the cards instead of the cash, every time e-commerce grows, and every time digital payments increase. So these companies process more transactions. You will understand, when that happens, their revenue grows. What is actually the scale of the payment system? The global payment industry processes trillions of dollars every year. Cash is gradually being replaced by digital transactions. So you have the online shopping, the mobile payments, and the contactless cards have really accelerated this trend. And as economies become more digital, the volume of transactions continues to grow. And this creates a powerful dynamic situation because the companies like Visa and Mastercard don't need to predict which business will be succeeded, of course. They benefit just from the whole entire economy. But card networks are only one part of the whole global payment system. Who are the gatekeeper of the payments. If Visa and Mastercard build the rails of the global payments, a new generation of companies build the gates. Companies like Stripe, Adyen, PayPal, and Block Inc. do not own the global payment infrastructure. They also do not replace the banks, and they do not replace card networks. No, they can control the access to the whole system. These companies are not just service providers, they are the gatekeepers. Because they decide who can accept payments, which countries are supported, and what types of transactions are allowed, how risk is managed. If a business is blocked by Stripe or PayPal, it can effectively be cut off from the global economy overnight. And this gives these companies a subtle but enormous form of control. Not over the money itself, but over who is allowed to move it. And that is their power. So we have the global scale and the local reach. Adyen, for example, it powers payments for global giants like Spotify and Uber. Stripe has become the backbone of the internet economy, used by startups and tech companies around the world. And PayPal built one of the first truly global digital wallets. And Block Inc., they reshaped the small business payments with simple mobile first tools. And while many of these companies started online, they now extend into the physical world through devices. Companies like Genico, this company is listed on the world line Euronext in Paris. And then we have Verifone. This is not a publicly trading stock anymore. And we have PAX Technology, listed in Hong Kong. And they control the machines you tap your card or your phone on. These devices are more than hardware. They capture the transaction data. They connect to payment processors, and they also enforce the security standards. So they represent the physical checkpoint of the global payment system. And this is a different kind of power, unlike Visa or Mastercard. These companies, they don't own the rails, but they control the experience, the access point, and the data layer. And in many ways, they are closer to users and businesses than the underlying infrastructure. And in the modern economies, we say that proximity often means power. So the key insight is the card networks move the money. The gatekeepers decide who gets to use the system and how, and there is still another invisible layer. The invisible backbone beneath the apps, beneath the cards and the terminal gives something even more powerful. A quiet infrastructure that most people never see, but that makes the global payments possible. This is the true backbone of the financial system. The language of bank accounts is IBAN. At the most basic level, money needs just an address, and that address is the IBAN. It's the international bank account number. The IBAN standardized how bank accounts are identified across countries, and without it, automation would be far more difficult. It is simple but very essential. Then we have Europe's payment engine, SEPA. In Europe, payments are unified under the SEPA, and SEPA allows bank transfers across the countries as easily as the domestic rules and formats. So it is faster and cheaper, the Euro payments, but for users, it feels seamless. But behind the scenes, it represents a massive coordination and an effort between banks and regulators and also the institutions. And then we have the global network, SWIFT. So if IBAN is the address and SEPA the regional system, then SWIFT is the global communication layer. SWIFT does not move the money itself. Instead, it sends secure messages between the banks and telling them who should pay and how much and to who and which account. It connects over 11,000 financial institutions worldwide. And without SWIFT, the international banking would slow down dramatically. So who really controls these layers? Unlike the companies in the previous layers, this layer is not dominated by startups or tech giants. It's shaped by central banks or the governments, or maybe international institutions. And that makes it more stable and more regulated, but also harder to change. It's a power without visibility. And most people never think about IBAN or SEBA or SWIFT. They don't have apps, they don't advertise, they don't have user interfaces, and yet they define how money moves between the countries, who can participate in the global system, and how fast, how safely the transactions occur. So not everything is investable. Systems like SEBA, IBAN, and SWIFT are not companies you can invest in. They are more the infrastructure, the standard networks between the banks, and the most powerful parts of the payment systems are often least visible. But who really controls the global payments? After exploring the different layers of the system, one thing becomes very clear. There is no single company that controls the global payments. And yet, the system is far from decentralized. A system of layers, what we call global payments, is actually a stack of interconnected powers. Visa and Mastercard move transactions across the world. Stripe and Adyen and PayPal control how business access those networks. Companies like Ingenico and Verifone sit at the physical point of this whole sales system. And systems like SEPA and SWIFT quietly enable money to move between the banks and countries. But each layer depends on the others. So no single layer is independent. So the full control is together. They have something incredibly powerful. So the payment system, we can actually divide into main layers. You have the infrastructure. Those companies are invisible and not investable. And then we have the companies sitting on top of this whole, they are visible and they are also investable. And the companies on top are often the ones capturing the value. And this is why investors often look for companies. They don't just sell products, but they sit between transactions. And because of this, they sit on a flow of money. You don't depend on one outcome. You benefit from the system itself. So you also can take advantage of it. Next time when you tap your card or send money online, remember, you are not just making a payment. You are interacting with a global system built by companies and networks and institutions most people never see. And now you know who's behind it. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel. And subscribe if you want more deep dives into how the world actually works behind the scenes. See you in the next one.